Becoming Awesome with Peter D. Expand your consciousness. Welcome to Becoming Awesome. I'm Peter D. Today's episode is about Stargate pyramids and how to use sacred geometry to really access higher consciousness, healing, all kinds of wonderful things that happen when you bring sacred geometry into your life through a pyramid. Our guest today is Charlie Ziese, and after a lengthy career on Wall Street, he recently began his new career researching, manufacturing, and selling healing and meditation pyramids based on the specific geometry that for the past 30 years has been used by Russian scientists. These Russian pyramids are the most extensively studied pyramids in the world for their healing, environmental, agricultural, and material benefits. Now in the fourth year of his work on Russian pyramids, Charlie has recently established and is chairman of the Pyramid Science Foundation, a 501c3 tax-exempt organization dedicated to performing and disseminating cutting-edge research. So let's begin by welcoming Charlie. How are you doing today?
Peter, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Super. Before we dive into the heart of it, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. We have to pay attention to the algorithm that the computer uses if we want to get more people aware of the tools and power that's available for them to become awesome. So let's dive into some of that power today. Let's dive into Russian pyramids. Before we go in, Charlie, tell us briefly about your career on Wall Street. What was that like?
Well, I enjoyed it quite a bit when I first started, Peter, and that was over 40 years ago. I started to work in New York in the mid-'70s, and really probably the most important thing that I did in my Wall Street career in terms of product development was in the late 70s. I happened to kind of be at the right place at the right time, so to speak, with respect to mortgage-backed securities. And I ended up actually being the person who figured out, I didn't come up with the idea, but as a young associate, I was given the task of actually putting that product together. And it was a tremendously fulfilling experience to take and develop a brand new product and to see it succeed. But all of you know that was the product that in 2008 ended up bringing the world to its knees.
So you single-handedly saved the world and crushed it at the same time.
And crushed it a number of years later.
Great. So now you've moved on that. And was it just retirement, or what brought you to your current interest?
Well, I guess a couple of things did. On the physical plane in this lifetime, I watched just about 4 years ago, David Wilcock, who had at the time a series called Wisdom Teachings on Gaia TV. And I was a religious follower of that show because he had so much great information. Well, he did a 10-part series on the Russian pyramids in that series. And that's really what piqued my interest. I had read his other books, and there had been chapters on these, but it had never really caught my consciousness and my awareness. So on one level, that's it. On another level, actually, there's a psychic and a healer who was on our live stream, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But she's also told me that I've done this work for many, many lifetimes in the past, that I've been involved in past lifetimes with locating the actual locations of some of the great pyramids around the earth. So I can't prove that, but
goes around, comes around, and here you are doing it again.
That's right.
And I need to thank you, because when I first contacted you, you sent me this pyramid that I am inside of, and it's got this beautiful amplification plate, which I got a glass of water cooking up there, and a capstone that was custom made. We'll talk about that maybe later too. But I want to thank you. And I need to tell everybody watching and listening that this is really trippy being inside this. If I'm more la-la and gaga than I usually am, it's like I cannot tell you how frequency and energy and consciousness gets amplified and ramped up just from being inside the structure. So, you got a little firsthand testimony here, and that's why I'm in this pyramid today for this podcast. So now your interest is specifically in Russian pyramids.
Right.
And this, as I understand, has a slope angle of 76.35 degrees. Is that correct?
That's right. We call it a slant angle, but yeah, that's it. That information, this is an interesting story, but the Russians have never really given that information out in the West, and I had to go through quite a process of determining the precise angles, which took me down the path of reading some torsion physics research in Russia and David Wilcock's books that he has out on his website, Divine Cosmos. And really by doing that, I developed a thesis as to what I thought this was, and that's what kind of got me on the path. But yes, the slant angle is 76.345 degrees, and what that is, that's the angle, if you look at the pyramid, say that Peter's in, if you looked at it from the ground going up, it's this angle from the floor up that's 76.345 degrees. Now,
nice. And what have you discovered that's special about this type of geometry? What kind of effects are you noticing from applying it?
Well, let's first talk a little bit about the Russian research because it's so well documented. But
cool. They
have had a tremendous amount of research done first and foremost in the area of health and public health. There are scientific experiments that have been done, for example, that demonstrate that mice who are injected with the typhoid fever virus have a 10 times greater survival rate by being under the pyramid than the control group. So in other words, if they were
in these times of COVID,
yeah,
nice.
It's very timely with COVID. But with this typhoid fever virus, the mice were given a light injection of this. 6% of them survived, but 60% survived in the pyramid. And at a higher dosage, 3% survived in the control group and 30% survived in the pyramid. So it's just amazing. There was another experiment on human babies that were born severely prematurely. Those babies, because of their compromised immune systems, had virtually no chance of surviving. And using the statistical index that they used, they took 20 of these severely at-risk immune deficient babies and were given water that was put under the pyramid. And rather than having a 100% mortality rate, they had a 100% survival rate. Wow. So, I mean, this is what is this is the science is what got me interested. I was a biology major, was giving thought at one point to going to medical school, had a car accident and kind of messed up. I was going to have to take a 5th year to finish up all of my classes, but decided to go on to Wall Street and to business school. But so
hard
all
choices, Wall Street, hospital, doctor, hard choices. Yeah. I'm glad life is so good to you.
Well, sometimes life sends you some curveballs too, and I've had my fair share of those. So anyway, I really, that was what got me interested. When I saw that there was hard science behind this, before I really watched David's series, I would have thought that all this stuff was woo-woo. And, but when I saw the science behind it, that's what really piqued my interest. And
so just to tell you, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we're so woo-woo. If you don't know your horoscope, you don't have anything to talk about at the grocery store when you go shopping. So that's kind of why I live here. So I'm okay with all that. But like you, I'm a science geek. And when I start to see proof and I start to see research, especially when we realize how controlled science is. I took a class in college, and and 2 books really resonated with me. One was called Against Method, and it was talking about how the greatest discoveries are from madmen and lunatics, because science doesn't pay attention until there's enough research done, and we need to look at that in the early days. And the other one was The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, and it talked about how editors and publishers control science and not scientists. So here you are having to dig through research from another country to find this information. So my hat is off to you for the work you're doing. What other goodies do you have to share scientifically?
Well, again, from the healthcare perspective, the Russian science research indicates actually a method of action that's going on, and it has to do with the enhancement of the immune function in the body. One of the studies on mice indicated that the thymus gland, not the thyroid gland, but the thymus gland, which is located right about here in your chest, it's the gland that produces what are called T cells in your immune system, and they are white blood cells that are distributed throughout your body. Well, the reason why older people in this COVID-19 and any sort of viral, coronavirus type situation are usually influenced more heavily or are impacted is because their thymus glands start to decline in size and become very fatty. So the immune function, which is very normal and healthy in the body in a younger age, starts to deteriorate. Well, in these mice, they found that the size of the thymus gland increased and went back to normal size in the older mice, and that seemed to be the method that was causing the improvement in the immune function. So you've got all this great information. That's why we set up this foundation. And I just want to take a second to say, we literally, this is being filmed in late June, but we literally just got our 501c3 designation last week. So we are hot on the trail. I've got for some funding to replicate this research. The research that was done in Russia, quite honestly, was not allowed and was suppressed and was never published in the United States. So all we really have to go on are the abstract summaries of the research itself from Russia. So we're looking to do this. But in agriculture, just to talk about agriculture quickly, putting a pyramid into the fields increased crop yields by 400%, storing the seeds before they were planted inside of a pyramid increased the crop yields 100 to 200%.
So let me just follow up real quick here. Yeah. When you say put a pyramid in the field, are you suggesting that there's an effect beyond the structure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The field that's generated by these pyramids, the Russians used radar as an example. They built a number of these larger pyramids. Some of them are about 44 meters high in Russia. They were able to detect the energy fields of these pyramids as far away as 50 miles from the original site.
So just a little quick math, which is going to be for you, not for me. Right. This is a 7-foot pyramid I'm in, so we're talking that this might have a several 100-yard effect.
The very interesting question, Peter. On its own, and I'm going to say without any enhancements or amplifications used, the pyramid itself will extend for that distance. When we start to add enhancers such as the capstone that you have on the top of your pyramid, that's going to increase it by many factors. And more recently, we've begun to look at the area of sound healing.
Great. And before we get into sound healing,
okay,
I want to I just want to really milk what you're talking about because it's so delicious, and we're going to get into sound healing because that's really cool too. So what I'm noticed from your talk is that infants to elderly, from immune function particularly,
right,
across the life spectrum, this sacred shape changes and enhances a person physically.
That's correct.
You also talked about how just life in general, as far as growth in fields and seeds yield.
Right.
Before we get into the sound part of this, to amplify the frequency, do you have any idea on the mechanism? How is it that we move from sacred geometry to health benefits?
Sure. this has been perhaps the most interesting part of this journey is finding how mathematics can become geometry, can become frequency, and how those all interact and interplay with each other. To get back to the geometry of the pyramid, the specific research that pointed me in the right direction was from a Russian torsion physicist named Anatoly Akimov. And Akimov proved in the 1980s that a pyramid or a cone, any structure of that type, that contained the angle of the phi spiral was the most significant factor in its ability to generate and amplify these torsion or scalar energy fields. And that's what got me on this path and ultimately helped me to figure out the geometry. Now, once I'd done that, I happened to come across a book last year written by a gentleman named Marshall Lefferts, who is part of the Resonance Science Foundation. Nassim Haramain's group, was president of his board of directors.
So this is really funny. I interviewed G.W. Hardin, which will actually be a couple of weeks before this episode airs with you. And he attributed Marshall Lefferts for coming up with the concept of inherent thriving. So I now want to hear, I want to hear what you're going to attribute this Marshall Lefferts.
And Marshall came up with what he calls the phi scaling angle. Phi, for those of you in the audience who may not know, it can be a number, which is 1.618, and it goes on. It's an irrational infinite fraction. It can be a number, it can be a ratio, but it can also in 3 dimensions be an angle. And so this is exactly what I determined when I found before his book came out. He has a website called cosmometry.net. And I got in touch with him because I found that this phi scaling angle that he found all throughout nature is exactly the same geometry as this pyramid. So that was factor number one. He shows it in nature in any number of different contexts. The angle of seashells, bark on a tree that grows with the phi scaling angle. Sand at the beach at low tide will demonstrate this. Birds will fly in this angle. So I saw all of these things in nature. So I started to look for them in man-made objects, and I just found this everywhere. You will find it in every Hindu temple. You will find it in every Buddhist temple. You will find it in pagodas. You will find it in steeples in Christianity, Judaism, Islam.
This is ancient knowledge that's been in front of us, although it hasn't been expressed as an angle.
That's right. That's right. And all of these, and then this is not to digress too much, but more recently I became familiar with the Tartarian Empire and the Tartarian architecture. This is, if you look at all of the great old buildings around the world, you will find obelisks and the Salt Lake Temple, the Mormon Temple in Salt Lake City is a prime example with the steeples, all have this architecture. And it looks like this was the basis for free energy, for healing in all of these ancient cities, and that there was actually a civilization that covered the vast majority of the world that use this geometry, and I'm very excited about exploring that as well. So nice. It just shows you this is everywhere. It's literally hiding in plain sight.
So it's found in nature in many, many angles of how life produces and reproduces. And right. That to me is a connection. Okay, there's something there. This is life enhancing. Now, let's go into frequency. You're talking about that's been your latest adventure.
Right. And frequency will tie into the probably the most important geometry in our body, which is our DNA. And here, I had seen this previous to getting introduced to G.W. Hardin's work, but he has put us in, all of this ties together when you realize that the microtubules in the DNA, in our DNA, and the spiraling structure of the DNA itself all conform to the phi spiral. And so you're asking why this works. What's the method of action? It seems to be that this geometry is the geometry that nature is using in our DNA. The information that is available about DNA has really grown tremendously in the last 10 to 15 years. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, originally, I think from the University of Pittsburgh, works, I believe, at the University of Arizona now, has determined that the geometry of the microtubules is exactly that of this angle. Other scientists, such as Dr. Konstantin Meil in Germany, has determined that DNA uses scalar frequencies, scalar waves, to communicate with other cells and with its environment. So you start to put all of this together, again, with solfeggio frequencies, which are based upon this very same kind of, it's called vortex mathematics. We're just starting to put all this together, but it all works into a consistent whole. I'll give you another example if you're familiar, Peter, with the concept of cymatics. But
no, go ahead, explain.
Cymatics, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, is a science of demonstrating geometric patterns and shapes that develop resulting from frequencies. And essentially, in the simplistic experiment, if you have a speaker sitting on a table and you put say a piece of rubber, you suspend it above it, that will vibrate. You put sand on there,
right, and
turn on a
beautiful patterns.
frequency, and as you change the frequencies, you'll see these patterns change. Well, I'm pulling a lot of things together here at once, but one of the fascinating theories that comes about from the research that many researchers have done on the Tartarian Empire, you'll look at the church, some of these ancient churches that have these steeples with these geometries, you'll see a circular stained glass picture with a unique geometric design on the front. Well, some of these people are theorizing that these are actually the symbols visually of the very frequency that is inherent in that temple or cathedral. And that these there's actually a researcher in England who's tying this all together, who's gone in and literally tape recorded the inherent vibrational frequency of these old cathedrals and played them back. And she's found that these stained glass depictions are exactly the cymatic patterns of that frequency that are in these stained glass. So it's just fascinating research information.
It so is. I've been friends with GW for a little more than a decade. And a few years back, he sends out a set of harmonic tones that he developed. And basically, those of you who go to my website, which is becomingawesome.podbean.com, or those of you who are watching this on YouTube or Facebook, at the very beginning, you're going to see a spinning Sri Yantra come out and settle. And the Sri Yantra is a set of pyramids, not Russian degrees, but pyramids, that has been an ancient symbol of awakening and transformation. And what GW did is he found the mathematical angles of all that and translated it into tones, which then he developed a Tesla antenna, a CADUCEUS coil, to actually broadcast, the harmonic frequency of awakening so that people around the planet can start to create a new grid network. So I did that for a while, and it was quite nice, quite transformative. So that was my first introduction to the idea that shape in geometry is also frequency sound shapes, and that it can affect us. Now, what are you doing to introduce what you know about frequency and apply it to these pyramid structures that you've built?
Well, starting about, I think it was about 5 months ago now, I was on on the other side of midnight, which is Richard Hoagland's show, 3 times in about 2 months, primarily dealing with COVID and the healing powers of these pyramids. And so as part of that, on one of the shows I was on with a woman named Sherry Edwards, who has a unique ability to hear things that most of us can't. And so what she has been able to do in her work is to develop specific frequencies that will essentially eliminate or kill viruses and other pathogens in the body using specific frequencies, a la Royal Rife, Hulda Clark, and others who have done specific frequency, related work. So
before we go any further,
yeah,
how does somebody listening acquire these frequency lists?
well, you mean that she has developed and others?
Or anybody, Rife,
Well,
how do you get your hand on a frequency
you can actually
list?
go on the internet and, if you, for Royal Rife, for example, there are what are called Rife machines, and there are specific frequencies, books that you can go out and find, and that the various manufacturers will put together, who make the Rife machines. So Hulda Clark, I believe, has done similar things. Sherry Edwards has as well. Now, that information is a little bit, that approach is really different than what our approach is with the pyramid. One of the founding, the Dr. Alexander Golod, who was in charge of the research projects in Russia, says that the method of action for the pyramid is harmonizing frequencies and the environment around it to make it beneficial for life. And it's very challenging to understand that in a vacuum until you start to get into vortex mathematics, which is the brainchild of Marco Rodin, and then you get into the work of G.W. Hardin, and you start to see that there is a mathematical pattern which develops, which can be used to change frequencies into sound and into geometry. So that's a lot. It's a mouthful, but
so that's the theory. What specifically are you doing now for frequency that people listening to this who say, okay, I'm going to be calling Charlie up and getting me one of these pyramids. How do I bring frequency in?
Yeah, what we have done, one of the things that we've done, we began playing solfeggio, the basic solfeggio frequencies about 4 months ago, before we knew about GW's work, and we tested approximately 50 people who were presenting with symptoms similar to the flu. And at that time, of course, people were concerned about COVID. And so in every case, the people who had those symptoms, they disappeared within a 15 to 20 minute session. And I saw this personally.
And was it any particular solfeggial tones?
Well, at that time we were only familiar with the 9 frequencies of what GW calls the 6 seeds. So since that time, we have now been developing and using the entire solfeggio matrix that GW has developed, and we're getting surprising, amazing results with that as well, both physically and emotionally. Lori Sasson, who works with us on our live stream as a psychic and an intuitive, and she can take people through sessions, and she can determine what specific frequencies are, how they are impacting a particular person and where they're impacting them. She can determine the energy levels that are being enhanced and so forth. We are just in the very, very beginning stages of
That's
this.
what's so exciting, is you're literally forging a road of new science.
So I'd love to tell you today that we have definitive results. Lori does amazing work with this, and we're just beginning to use these frequencies for these purposes. So
now I've heard you talk that there may be, hearing rumors, that there may be an app in development that's going to give you easy access to frequencies.
Yes, that is true. It's in development. It's not being done by me, but another member of our group, and so more to come when.
Stay tuned.
but coming soon from what I understand, yes.
Fantastic. So I'm going to do a little interlude. Interludes are nice. We're going to do a little interlude just to talk about hardware for a second.
Okay.
So
all right.
You sent me this beautiful CADUCEUS coil.
Yes, yes.
A Tesla antenna. And according to G.W. Harden, it's wound in patterns of 9 for amplifying the frequency. You've actually filled this PVC pipe with a crystal structure.
Right, with some high crystalline sand, high quartz content sand.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it then gives the ability, you just get an alligator clip. The other end of the alligator clip is hooked to output, either from your phone,
that's right,
or an iPad, or in this case, an amplifier, which was $20 on Amazon.
That's right.
It up.
Looks like you followed the instructions.
Well, I tried, and I stopped the broadcast because I took it apart to show everybody what was going on. So I actually stopped it. I had tones that G.W. Harden had created from an angel visitation. And let me tell you, when I play these tones, boy, does my head expand. And then when I'm in the pyramid meditating with these tones, a lot of goodness is happening. So, and this hardware is on GW's site. He actually has plans you can download, so you can make this. You can buy it for a few dollars from him. You can buy the enhanced version with crystal from you. Again, inexpensive, because I know you're working to get this out there. The app is coming, and there are just tones already available for you to use. So having said all that, what's your takeaway with how to proceed?
Well, the end game, you're right. We've got so many things coming together at the same time. Ultimately, I envision a package where you can take the sit inside the pyramid, play the frequencies through the app and through other mechanisms, run it through the CADUCEUS coil, and have sessions with someone like Lori who can assist you with determining which frequencies your body is in need of, how to use them, and to assist your body in healing itself. So I see an entire package coming together here very quickly.
That'll be so beautiful. And as we ascend into 5D, more and more of us are going to be able to intuit. This morning when I sat down to meditate, I have a little just downloadable app that generates frequency. You type in a frequency and it just sends it out. And those are $1, at the App Store.
Right.
And I just sat down and I said, okay, sacred higher self, I want to do this kind of meditation today. What kind of frequency? And I just waited till I got some information, and I go, okay, is this the one? They're like, yep. And had a beautiful meditation. So more and more, we're going to move into the place where we're going to literally be physician heal thyself, because we're going to heal ourselves. Till then, we're going to have beautiful access through people like Lori and other people in the Stargate Pyramid community to help usher this in. Tell me how to get in touch with you. How do people find Stargate Pyramids? How do they get their hands on something fantastic like this?
Sure. Well, first off, go to stargatepyramids.com. That's my website. You can order your pyramids and CADUCEUS coils there. Right now, I've got some specials running, an introductory special on the coils, as well as a sale on the pyramids. So go there for that information. Currently, we are on YouTube page Stargate Pyramids. If you're interested in watching our weekly live streams, those occur Mondays at noon Eastern time. We discuss topical issues related to pyramids, healing, and the like. So join us there. As well, go to pyramidsciencefoundation.org. That's the foundation's website. And also, we'll be switching, maybe by the time this live stream is broadcast, we will have switched the weekly Pyramid Quest live stream to the Pyramid Science Foundation YouTube page as well. So lots of different ways to find us and keep in touch about our research and information. And while I'm at it, by the time this airs, we're going to be accepting contributions for our research foundation. So if you're interested in helping us with the research, all of us have been putting in a lot of time, a lot of hours, and without a lot of return here for our research efforts. So we would appreciate contributions on the PyramidScienceFoundation.org website.
Fantastic. And that's a big thing that I want to get into, because as you give, so shall you receive. I know that just talking to you about pyramids, because I saw you in a class I was teaching, you were in a pyramid taking my class. I'm like, what? And so I called you up to talk to you, and you just sent me this. And yeah. I was telling all my friends and my wife that for years, ever since I read David Wolcott's book, I wanted to build a Russian pyramid, but I couldn't put together. And here it was, just talking to you, and boom, it got sent to me. And then I was able to, through your organization and contacts, connect with the person who made me this beautiful capstone, Lisa. She also sent me some high quartz content sand, so I filled all the tubes. So I'm literally sitting in a crystal pyramid. So it was like a lifelong dream that came to me. And without question, I just went and made a donation to you, because this is how it flows. This is why I'm asking everybody out there, if you like what you're hearing, get the flow in your life, go to becomingawesome.podbean.com. You can make a donation here. I'm going to put up on the screen again. Can you say where they can make a donation to the Stargate pyramids, Charlie?
Well, make a donation to the pyramid. Go to PyramidScienceFoundation.org webpage, and there will be instructions there on how you can contribute.
Fantastic, because as you give, so you get. Remember the whole algorithm thing: like, subscribe, share, follow. Please click one of those buttons to get this out there so more and more people. We're on the verge of something so incredible. We've got cutting edge people who are dedicating their life to doing real science. Like, okay, let's just figure this out and run controlled tests to see what's going on so that we can get this information out there for healing, for increased consciousness. It's just so exciting. You can be a part of that. You can help in the flow. So before we close down, any last words of inspiration?
Well, I guess what I would just say is that, this is but a tool that we're trying to develop to assist you in getting control back of your own life. This is going to help you with your health. It's going to help you with your connection with your higher self. And all of these tools are wonderful, but ultimately, as with all other tools, they are just a tool, and the real work has to come from doing the work to clear your blockages, your emotional blockages, and the like. And Peter, that's the place where I know you put your focus. You're doing such great work in helping people.
Thank you.
In those areas. So, to me, life is to be lived abundantly, and abundance for me is health. It's friendships. It's knowing that what I'm doing for the first time in my life is something that's going to be beneficial to mankind. And so, all I would ask is that you support us, you support Peter and people like us who are attempting to bring about a higher consciousness and greater well-being to mankind.
Thank you so much. You honor me with those words. Let me just say that I know it goes against all the video rules to be backlit. All right, like that. Just light behind my head. I know it's against all the rules, but I wanted to do today's episode in the pyramid. So this is kind of what you get. You get the cat wall and everything. So I'm blaming the light on the pyramid. If it looks like I have a halo, it's all because of the pyramid. All right. Stay blessed, everybody. My heart to yours. Many, many blessings.
Thank you for having me, Peter.